Every great business idea, whether it's a neighborhood bakery or the next big thing in tech, runs into the same critical choice right at the start. And it's not what you think. It's not about the logo. It's not even about the first product. It's all about the legal bones of your operation. So let's just dive right into this huge decision. How are you going to structure your business?
No, seriously, it's true. Before you even think about making your first sale, you have to figure out what kind of company you're actually building. I mean, this single decision, it's going to shape your taxes, how much personal risk you're taking on, and your ability to grow for years. It is literally the blueprint for everything else that comes after.
And that blueprint, really, it all boils down to one fundamental trade-off. It's a question every single founder has to answer for themselves. How much control are you willing to give up to protect yourself? That's the core tension, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into first.
I mean, this quote from Napoleon, it just nails the mindset of the solo founder, doesn't it? It's that spirit of total ownership, wanting to have your hands on every single lever of the business. And that leads us straight to the simplest structure of them all.
So, what is a sole proprietorship? Well, it's the most straightforward way to get a business off the ground. Plain and simple. You are the business, and the business is you. There is absolutely no legal separation between the two. That makes it incredibly easy to set up. Think about a freelance designer, a writer, maybe that small shop down the street. But here's the classic double-edged sword. On one side, hey, you're the king or queen. You have total control. You call all the shots, and every penny of profit is yours. But, and this is a huge but, the downside is massive. Unlimited liability. What does that mean? It means if the business goes under, there's no difference between business debt and your personal debt. Your car, your house, yeah, it's all on the line. And that kind of risk, not to mention the massive workload of doing it all yourself, is exactly why this old proverb hits so hard. This idea of wanting to go far, not just fast, leads us right into our next structure, the partnership. A partnership is, well, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's a team approach. Suddenly, you're not alone anymore. You're pooling your money, your skills, your energy with someone else to chase a common goal. And that, of course, lets you do way more than you ever could on your own. Okay, but this is where it gets a little more complex, because not all partnerships are created equal. First, you have what's called a general partnership. You can think of this like a team of sole proprietors. Everybody shares the work, the profits, and, crucially, that same unlimited risk. But then there's a limited partnership, which creates two different kinds of partners. You have the general partners, who are running the show and still carry all that personal risk. And then you have limited partners, who are basically just investors. Their risk is limited only to the money they actually put in. It's a way to protect their personal assets.
All right, so what if you don't want to build this whole thing from the ground up? What if there was a way to use a model that's already been proven to work? Well, that brings us to our next idea, scaling with a pre-built system. And the most famous example of this is the franchise, which people often call a business in a box. And that's a perfect description. You're essentially buying the rights to use a big, successful company's brand, their products, their entire operating manual. Think McDonald's, think Subway. You're getting a business that's ready to go. So the deal itself is pretty straightforward. The main company, that's the franchisor, gives you the famous brand and the entire playbook on how to run things. In exchange, you, the franchisee, buy in, you pay them ongoing fees, and you have to agree to follow their rules to the letter. It's a classic trade-off, right? You give up some freedom for a much lower risk of failure. See, a franchise is a very top-down system. But what if you wanted to build something together, collaboratively, from the ground up, more democratically? Well, that spirit of shared creation is really the heart and soul of our next model, the cooperative. Now, a co-op is fundamentally different from everything we've talked about. It's owned and it's run by its own members. That could be the workers, it could be the customers, and the absolute key here is democratic control. It doesn't matter if you invested $1 or $1 million. Every single member gets one vote. That's it. Decisions are made together, and the profits are shared for the benefit of the whole group. Okay, let's circle all the way back to that huge problem we started with, unlimited personal liability. Remember that? Pretty much every structure we've talked about so far, with the tiny exception of limited partners, leaves the owners personally on the hook if things go wrong. But there is a solution, and it's often called the corporate shield. And that shield is the corporation.
Now, this is built on a really powerful, kind of mind-bending idea. Under the law, the business becomes its own artificial person. It's a legal entity that is completely separate from its owners. It can own property, it can sign contracts, it can even be sued, all by itself. And that right there, that is the absolute game changer. Because the business is its own person, if it racks up a ton of debt, creditors can only go after the company's assets, not your assets. Your personal stuff is protected behind a legal firewall. This is what we call limited liability. And honestly, it's what makes it possible for people to take the huge risks needed to build massive companies. Now, corporations generally come in two main flavors. First, you have private corporations. These are owned by a small, select group of shareholders, and their stock isn't traded publicly. You can't just go online and buy a piece of the company. Then you've got public corporations. Their stocks are traded on big stock exchanges, which means pretty much anyone can buy shares and become an owner. Whew, okay. We have covered a lot of ground here, right? From the lone wolf founder all the way to the giant global corporation. So, with all these different options sitting on the table, how on earth do you actually choose the right one for you?
All right, let's break this down to the core dilemma. Think about the two ends of the spectrum we've discussed. You've got the sole proprietorship, which gives you absolute, total control, but leaves all your personal assets at risk. Then, on the other end, you have the corporation, which gives you that incredible protection of limited liability, but it comes with a lot more complexity and cost. You see, each one of these structures is just a different tool for a different job. Your choice really depends entirely on what it is you're trying to build.
So, in the end, the ultimate question isn't just, hey, what's your big idea? It's what kind of legal structure are you going to give that idea to bring it to life? Each path we've looked at has its own rules, its own risks, and its own rewards. Your idea is waiting. The choice is yours.